Dear friends, this is episode number 110 of CPC. We are dealing with section 11. Next topic under the section 11 is constructive res judicata. Heading constructive res judicata. Explanation 4 relates to that. Explanation 4 reads, any matter which might and ought to have been made a ground of defense or attack in such former suit shall be deemed to have been a matter directly and substantially in issue in such suit. So any matter which might and ought to have been made a ground of defense or attack in the former suit shall be deemed to have been a matter directly and substantially in issue in such suit. So a matter was there in which you might and ought to have made a ground of defense or attack. You did not do it. It shall be deemed that it was a matter directly and substantially in issue in the former suit. How it operates? By the deeming fiction, this question which was not raised by you shall be deemed to be a matter directly and substantially in issue in the former suit means it was heard and finally decided and it was decided against you. And thereby that contention which you ought to have taken in the former suit and having not taken, you are barred by constructive res judicata from raising it in the second suit. You did not raise that in the former suit. And therefore the court had no occasion to consider it. Still, by this deeming fiction, it shall be taken that you had raised that and it was finally decided. By that deeming fiction, you are precluded from raising that contention which you should have raised in the former suit but which you did not raise. It is not only those contentions which you actually raised and decided that constitute res judicata for the second suit, but things which you should have raised but you did not raise shall also form res judicata in the second suit. This is the crux of it. Now we consider some of the decisions under constructive res judicata. Only a few, because two episodes it will be over. 1997 9 SEC 66 parallel citation AIR 1997 Supreme Court 809 State of Punjab and others versus Messrs. Surinder Kumar and Company and others. Cancellation of a license to vend liquor. That was the subject matter of a writ petition. Minister concerned was made a correspondent. Allegations of malafides were raised against him. High Court did not decide that question. High Court directed the respondents to avail the alternative remedy of appeal before the appellate authority. High Court did not decide that question in the writ petition. High Court directed the respondents to avail that alternative remedy of appeal before the appellate authority. And it was directed to go into the merits of the matter and decide it according to law. That is, the appellate authority was directed to go into the merits. Minister was not implicated in the party in the second batch of writ petitions. A second batch of writ petitions was filed. Minister was not made a party. it was held that the word might and ought in section 11 CPC stand in the way, and therefore it operates as res judicata for raising the same question in the present writ petition. Para 5, the discussion. I will read para 5. It is seen that in the batch of writ petitions, admittedly the minister was made a co-respondent, and allegations of malefides came to be made against him. The High Court did not decide that question. On the other hand, a reading of the order would indicate that the High Court instead directed the respondents to avail the alternative remedy of appeal before the appellate authority, and the appellate authority was directed to go into the merits of the matter and decide it according to law. It is seen that the appellate authority did go into the merits, found that the respondents committed illegalities and irregularities in conducting the business of vending the Indian-made foreign liquor. However, in the matter of imposition of penalty, the appellate authority had felt it expedient, instead of cancelling the license, to confine the period from August 22, 1995 till September 22, 1995, the date on which the High Court granted interim suspension of the operation of the cancellation order as suspended. High Court in the first round had suspended the cancellation for a short period. It could be seen that in the second batch of writ petitions, the minister was not made a party. It is settled legal position that the High Court could not have gone into the malefides, and it would not decide the matter on merits on the question of malefides. In such a situation, can the division bench direct the appellate authority to go into the question of malefides? It is seen that in the first round of litigation, when the High Court had not gone into the question of malefides, though the minister was implicated as a party, it has remitted the matter for disposal on merits. Obviously, the words might and ought used in section 11 CPC stand in the way, and therefore it operates as res judicata for raising the same question in the present writ petitions. The High Court could not have gone into the question, much less giving direction to the appellate authority, namely the Excise and Taxation Commissioner, to go into that question. This is what was held. Constructive res judicata, the principal explanation 4 was applied, and it was held that over and again it cannot be raised again. 1996-3 SCC 54. 96-3 SCC 54. Dr. Ghanshyam Jaiswal versus Kamal Singh. Dr. Ghanshyam Jaiswal versus Kamal Singh. It was an eviction suit. Compromise decree was passed. In execution, judgment letter filed an application under sections 47, CPC, challenging the validity of the compromise decree, which was rejected by the executing court and confirmed by the High Court. So in execution, the judgment letter filed an application under section 47 CPC challenging the validity of the compromise decree, and that was rejected by the executing court and it was confirmed by the High Court. Again, the judgment letter filed another application under section 47 contending that the decree is vague and incapable of being executed. Another shade of contention. Decree is vague and incapable of being executed is the contention, the second application. Executing court rejected it, but High Court reversed the decision, which led to the matter being taken to Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, having entered into the compromise and suffered a decree on the foot of the compromise, and also having raised the plea of non-executability of the compromise decree, and having become unsuccessful, he is precluded by constructive res judicata of might and ought in explanation 4 to section 11 to raise any other plea regarding executability of the decree. So if a decree is null and void, its invalidity can be raised at any point of time in execution or even in collateral proceedings. That was raised. Executability or otherwise of the decree was raised on certain grounds. But that application was dismissed and it was confirmed in appeal. Then again another application under section 47 raising that it is vague and inexecutable. That is another contention with regard to the executability or otherwise. It is this contention might and ought to have been raised in the previous round of section 47 application. You cannot have section 47 application again and again on different grounds. Section 47 of the CPC says that all questions regarding execution, discharge and satisfaction of the decree shall be raised in the execution proceeding itself and not by a separate suit. That is section 47. Next decision is 1995 Supplemental 4 SCC 702. Parallel citation AIR 1996 Supreme Court 61. Sharat Chandra Ganesh Muley MULEY versus State of Maharashtra and others. That was under the Land Acquisition Act. A notification issued under section 10 under section 4.1 was challenged. Initially he filed a writ petition and obtained stay of dispossession. That writ petition was dismissed on merits. The land acquisition officer made the award, which was challenged in another writ petition, but without success. Then appeals by special leave against the original writ petition as well as the second writ petition. The Supreme Court in paragraph 5 said, it is seen that the bar under section 11A of the Land Acquisition Act was available to the appellant when the first writ petition was filed. This is the point involved. An objection regarding bar under section 11A was available to the appellant when the first writ petition was filed, since the Amendment Act 68 of 1984 had come into force on September 24, 1984 during the pendency of the writ petition, first writ petition. He did not raise that point. During the pendency of the writ petition, an amendment came and section 11A was introduced. He did not raise that point. Therefore, the doctrine of might and ought engrafted in explanation 4 to section 11 CPC would come into play, and the appellant is precluded to raise the controversy once over. Therefore, the doctrine of constructive res judicata puts an embargo on his right to raise the plea of the bar of limitation under section 11A. It was not raised. The bar under section 11A could have been raised in the first writ petition because that provision was made available in the statute book during the pendency of the first writ petition. He could have raised that. He cannot say that it was during the pendency of my writ petition that provision was made, therefore I can file another writ petition. No, it should be raised in that writ petition itself, because at the time when the writ petition was disposed of, this provision was available. So its benefit or applicability should be raised at the time when the first writ petition was there. Suppose it is that provision was made after the disposal of the first writ petition and the appeal and SLP thereafter, then of course That is not the situation here. It was available to him. He did not raise it. Then he filed a second writ petition and raised it. Supreme Court said no. Then next, 1995, 6 SCC 614, Nand Kishore versus State of Punjab. That was a writ petition challenging the order of compulsory retirement. Validity of the provision enabling the compulsory retirement was not questioned and decided. Question was whether res judicata applies. Writ petition challenging the order of compulsory retirement without challenging the enabling provision was dismissed by the High Court. A subsequent decision of the Supreme Court in another case, the same person filed a suit for declaration in view of the subsequent decision of the Supreme Court in another case. This provision was held unconstitutional. The provision, suppose X filed a writ petition challenging his compulsory retirement. That was dismissed by the High Court. He did not challenge the enabling provision under which the compulsory retirement was made. But in another writ petition filed by another person, not by X, the enabling provision under which such compulsory retirements could be made was challenged. The constitutionality or validity was challenged, and it was held to be constitutionally not valid. Thereafter, after that judgment of the Supreme Court, in another case, the same, at the time when the first writ petition filed by X was pending, the Supreme Court decision was not there. Nobody challenged the provision. And thereafter, somebody challenged that provision, and that provision was struck down. Then the same person, that is X, filed a suit for declaration that the compulsory retirement is invalid on the ground that the order was passed under an invalid provision. A contention was raised by the state that the suit is barred by constructive res judicata. Now let us see how it is decided. Paragraph 15. It is a very, very long paragraph, long discussions. I will cut it short to the extent possible, only to the extent possible. And then paragraph 15 refers to a decision by Chief Justice Gajendra Gadkar. There were conflicting views on that question. Not the question involved here, the question whether which I am going to read. Gajendra Gadkar CJ, who authored the judgment in the above quoted case of the Amalgamated Coalfields Limited case. Later in Devilal Modi versus Sales Tax Officer Ratlam and others. 1965 1 SCR 636. Yet applied the principles of res judicata, holding that if the doctrine of constructive res judicata was not applied to writ proceedings, it would be open to a party to take one proceeding after another and urge new grounds every time, which was plainly inconsistent with the considerations of public policy. This decision was followed in State of UP versus Nawab Hussain, 1977 3 SCR 428. There was a controversy. Different decisions were there. One view taken by the Supreme Court was that in writ petitions, the principles of res judicata will apply. No doubt about it. But the principles of constructive res judicata will not apply. Then Chief Justice Gajendra Gadkar, in the judgment referred to there in paragraph 15, said that the principles of constructive res judicata also can be applied to writ proceedings. And if it is not done, what will happen? It would be open to a party to take one proceeding after another and urge new grounds every time, which was plainly inconsistent with the considerations of public policy. So Chief Justice Gajendra Gadkar took that view and held that the principles of constructive res judicata will apply to writ proceedings as well. It was contrary to the earlier view. And this decision was followed in this Nandakishore's case by Chief Justice Ahmadi and Justice M.M. Punji. Paragraph 19, the discussion goes on. It would then have to be seen the twin play of the notion of deemed constitutionality and a bar of constructive res judicata. Raising the constitutionality of a provision of law, as it appears to us, stands on a different footing than raising a matter of bare question of law or mixed question of law and fact or on fact. There is a presumption always in favor of constitutionality of law. The onus is heavily on the person challenging it. It is by discharge of onus that the presumption of constitutionality can be crossed over. When a person enters the court for relief and does not challenge the constitutionality of law governing the matters directly and substantially in issue, it only means and implies that he goes by the presumption of constitutionality. This question of constitutionality of a provision stands on a different footing. I file a writ petition, I do not challenge the constitutionality of a provision. I need not, because then what does it mean? I go by the constitutionality, that's all. That does not preclude me. When a person enters a court and relief and does not challenge the constitutionality of a law governing the matters directly and substantial issue, it only means and implies that he goes by the presumption of constitutionality. He cannot, on this stance, be deemed to have raised the question of constitutionality and the question of constitutionality to have been decided against him, and such matter to have been a matter directly and substantially. So the constitutionality of a provision stands on a different footing. The constitutionality of the rule relating to compulsory retirement cannot be deemed to have been questioned and decided against the appellant on the principle of might and ought, or it being directly and substantially an issue. It cannot be taken as a rule that one of the pleas, either by the plaintiff or the defendant in every suit or proceeding, must be of necessity relate to the constitutionality of the law on which the issue is founded, etc., etc. It cannot also be taken as a rule that constitutionality of the law involved is a matter directly and substantially in issue. See the difference? And if not raised, renders a mute decision in favor of the constitutionality, barring the plea being raised in a subsequent suit. If there be read such a rule in civil litigation, it would, to our mind, be against public policy, vexing and burdening the courts to go into the constitutionality of provisions of law in every case. So it is not possible for a court to decide the constitutionality of the provision in every case, and it cannot on that stance be deemed that you, having not raised it, you are precluded from raising it. When under the impugned rule the government assumed to itself the power of compulsory retirement, a permanent government servant after 10 years of qualifying service, the court's act of striking that rule as unconstitutional is the law which appeared in the seal, not only to break the presumption of constitutionality but to declare it void. In a sense, the offending provision was never there, and in the other, it was henceforth not there. In either event, it would be within the ambit of emphasized in Madhura Prasad's case. So this is it. We will see in the next episode. Thank you.